much looking forward to this panel as well. We are getting more concrete again. We've had great panels on climate communication, on connecting with our inner desires and purposes and concerns. We've of course shared a lot about planet groups. We've had a very, very good panel discussion on how do we drive politics, and you witnessed, it is the end of it, the discussion with Mariana Bossezan and John Elkington on the bigger picture in the economic world. How do we create green swans, the role of money, the role of impact investing. And one aspect of that was the metrics of the game. As long as everything we do is measured and evaluated by a monetary profit alone, we are kind of bound to following the wrong incentives, following the wrong numbers. We don't get the management information that we need. Obviously, we still need to put the money behind the rest. So just knowing that we're destroying the planet will not stop us from destroying it if we still care only about the money. But that's only the first step. First, we have to make sure we actually know better how we destroy the planet, and not just some NGO measuring the overall destruction of the planet by all of us, but my company knowing how I actually impact the planet, and also putting me in a position where I can track my progress, right? And when we have that system, it will also be, there will be put money into that system, and more it's coming already. You see all the aspect of impact investing and the EU taxonomy and the value balancing on sustainable financing. So it'll not be long. With some carbon pricing, there'll be more coming. So companies increasingly see that they have to change, and not only for ethical reasons, not only for business reasons, but also because destroying the planet will cost money. And I'm so proud to have 3 experts here from 3 companies that are doing amazing work on helping companies doing just that. Harriet Kügelgen of a company called Planetly. They have developed and are, of course, still developing. It's not finished. It's work in progress. The carbon accounting software helping companies to have real-time information on the carbon footprint. I'll not introduce you more because you will give a presentation. Same is to Sonja Honigmann of a consultancy called Right Based on Science. They have a unique, I think, selling proposition by being able to tell every company on what climate trajectory they're in, with actually very little effort. They have done a really remarkable analysis comparing the business performance of 856 companies and their stock price and their dividends, and correlated with their climate trajectory, and found out that the most climate-aligned companies are more than 6 times more successful over the last 7 years than the least climate-aligned. So that's not business proof. I don't know what. So you'll present this tool that you have and how you use it and what effect you have. And last but not least, we have Giovanna Jagger of Worldwide Generations / G17 Eco. They end now joining Ellen, a colleague of Giovanna. Good to see you here. So those 2 will present the last one of the 3. A tool and an approach that goes beyond carbon, goes beyond climate, that helps companies to assess at one time and at the same time be then able to report based on, I think, 12, 13 different models. You will tell us exactly how many, because we have so many taxonomies, so many standards, so many certifications, and that's a lot of work and very complex, and you are reducing this complexity and actually making it possible for companies to establish the data once and then being able to extract it from the system and report on it very easily. So great tools. Looking forward to hearing about the tools, but of course also how they are used and the difference you make in actually driving climate action, because as I said at the beginning, the planet doesn't care if we know how we destroy it. The planet only cares if we stop destroying it. So that's the point. And we start with Harriet Kügelgen of Planetly. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you very much for organizing this really interesting panel. I would like to share my screen with you and give you a little presentation on Planetly, what we do. And I can already say, answer the question of today's panel, like, is carbon accounting part of the solution or part of the delay? I'm definitely pro carbon accounting, and I'm now going to tell you why I think that is the case. So I would like to start with a little quote by Julie Sweet. She is the CEO of Accenture, and she recently at the World Economic Forum said that sustainability is going to be the next digital and that every business will be a sustainable business. That pretty well describes where we already are, but especially where we are heading as a society and as an economy. But what does it actually mean for a company to be sustainable and to become sustainable? Today, or in this panel, we talk about carbon accounting. And we at Planetly are convinced that only what you can measure, you can manage. And so we at Planetly support companies, we enable companies to measure and manage their company carbon footprint. To give you a little bit of a background story here on Planetly. One of our founders, Anna Alex, she previously to Planetly founded another successful firm. And with that firm, she joined an initiative, which you probably have heard about, Leaders for Climate Action. And within that initiative, she then obviously had to measure, manage, and reduce her company carbon footprint. So she was looking around, trying to find a provider, to find somebody to support her in that. But then she was only finding consultants coming into her company with an Excel sheet and in a really time-consuming and painful way, collecting data, so that in the end she only had like an absolute number at the bottom of her Excel sheet. And then she said, no. If carbon emissions is one of the most important KPIs of the century, and if every company at one point in time will have to measure and reduce and manage their emissions, this has to be made more easy and more intuitively. And that is exactly what we make or what we do at Planetly. We make climate action easy for companies. So how do we make it easy? What is our mission here? We as Planetly are a climate technology company. So we built a software for carbon management. And why did we build a software for carbon management? Because we want to enable businesses to really be themselves without any or that much extra help, be able to measure the status quo. Where do you stand in terms of emission? But then also to track how your emissions develop. But since we do not, in most companies, you don't have all the expertise on how to reduce your carbon footprint, for example. We then also support companies in setting reduction targets, identifying reduction opportunities, because why do we do all this? Is because we want to reduce emissions. So to sum it up, what are we as Planetly? What is our mission? We are a technology startup, and our mission is to help build a carbon neutral economy. And we do that with the means of a software that helps companies to automate their carbon management, from data collection to reduction strategies and offsetting measures. Yeah, and so much for now to Planetly. I look forward to all questions after all the panelists have said something. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harriet. That obviously got everybody really curious now. And that's great. Looking forward to the rest of the discussion and obviously also further exchange. Sonja, you go next.
Yes, thank you, Tim. I would also like to share my screen. There will be slides, though not too many. For the sake of a stable internet connection, I will pause my camera while I share. I have had bad experiences this week. So so I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, very good.
Excellent. So yeah, thank you for having me here today. I'm happy to be part of the panel and to join the discussion. I work for Right Based on Science. We are a provider of climate metrics and software based in Frankfurt am Main. And as a company, we've just celebrated our 5th birthday. So Right is the creator of the X-degree compatibility, or XDC model, and it's the engine behind all our products and services, which we offer to corporate and financial clients. And the mission that unites us is to increase transparency on climate-related risks and opportunities. And that being quite a task in itself, our team has by now grown to more than 35 experts from a variety of fields, from science, economics, mathematics, law, and psychology. So, and I will join Harriet in answering the opening question, is carbon accounting the solution or part of the delay? And I would like to add another angle to that. We believe that it is part of the solution. To us, it's a very valuable and necessary first step. And I'd like to take a look back at the Paris Agreement, which is already there, a shared global target, and that target is limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that is what the Paris Agreement talks about and what we take as a reference. It is based on ton CO2, but it is an expression much clearer and much better to understand than that, or that pledges like net zero or climate neutrality. So this is what we think businesses and financial institutions and all the players of the economy should set their targets against. So measuring a carbon footprint in that sense, like I said, is a very valuable first step. And if we look at what the currently heavily rotating pledges such as net zero or climate neutrality really mean, they don't mean much more than this. They are a reference to be climate neutral at a certain point in time. That can be 2030 or 2050. And that is all they say. And when we keep that in mind, then maybe it's not a surprise that at the moment, significantly less than 1/4 of the companies in Germany are actually aligned to a 1.5 degree pathway at the moment. So climate targets and impact measuring, what do they need to do for us in order to answer the important questions? They need to answer if a business and a growth strategy and a business model are aligned with the Paris Climate Agreement. And to answer that, we need to consider that certain carbon budgets are associated with different degrees of global warming. And the 1.5 degree carbon budget is on this slide here, it's represented by the green line and everything that happens below that green line. So what kind of information do I need to make sure that my company remains on or below that green line, and thus within the budget of the Paris Agreement? I need forward-looking information, and it has to be transparent and comparable. And for instance, while net zero 2040 target may sound very ambitious, it's actually the degree of or the design of year-on-year emissions reductions that determines if that company is really on a path to Paris alignment or not. So if we, in that sense, take an advanced look at climate neutrality, we see what it really means, and it means a lot of things. In the sense of the EU Green Deal, it's described as a decoupling of value creation and emissions in accordance with the 1.5 degree budget. So while our value creation and the GDP are still growing, we need, in a sector-specific context, to reduce the emissions in accordance with the remaining budgets, and these has to be our pathways. And that's where our XDC model comes into play, because it follows that same logic that is applied in the EU Green Deal. The XDC model for temperature alignment is an economic climate impact model, which basically means that it sets the results of a carbon footprint, the CO2 equivalent emissions of the 3 scopes, into context of the value creation, here represented as the GVA, EBITDA, and personal costs of a company. And these are the input parameters that we work with. So this is the information that our clients give us in order to determine their climate impact. And to our knowledge, the XDC model is the only methodology of this kind that has a climate model integrated. It's the finite amplitude, I'll use the short version, the FAIR model. It's also used by the IPCC, so it's scientifically recognized. And we project the information given to us forwards along the shared socioeconomic pathways, and then we apply, since our model is scenario agnostic, a chosen scenario, for example, the 1.5 degree scenario of the International Energy Agency. And while that all might sound very complex, the result is really simple and transparent and powerful, because what you get is a degree Celsius information with what extent of global warming your business is compatible with. And of course, you can run your climate strategy against that, or an investment you want to decide to take or not. So the power of temperature alignment lies in that unified language, because if you think about how many different stakeholders a company has, and they all are used to different kind of climate metrics, be it ESG ratings or net zero pledges or tons of CO2 emissions. They might not even understand each other, or the information might contradict each other. So we believe in the power of speaking one language when it comes to an effort that complex and that important, and with the clock ticking, such as climate change is, that's what drives us to deliver this unified language to all the players that need to join in order to limit global warming. Yeah, and that's what we do. That was from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonja. Just to very, very, very powerful, very, very interesting. Also, of course, making us very curious. Just to clarify, Harriet, at Planetly, your main customers are companies, right? You work for B2B operating companies.
Yes, exactly.
And your customers, Sonja, are mainly investors or also companies, or who is your main target group with what you're offering?
Both businesses and financial institutions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, I'm looking forward to going in more depth in the questioning round, and also in the audience, you certainly have many questions. You can already put them in the chat, and I'll pick them up later in the discussion. And now, looking forward to the third tool approach by Worldwide Generation G17 Eco. Giovanna and Ellen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's been really great to hear what Harriet and Sonja have to share. It is incredible to how many of the words used here resonate with us, with how we approach this challenge that we have, and therefore to sit amongst people that are clearly feeling the pressure, but at the same time we're looking for solutions that we can present to businesses and the planet in general. So it's my privilege to introduce you to Worldwide Generation. And Ellen will give me a hand introducing one of our biggest assets and how we help organizations to tackle the reporting aspect of the challenge. We recognize that we're not all the answers, but we're definitely part of the solution. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to share my screen just to give you an introduction. Let me know when you can see it, please.
See it.
Okay, can you tell me if you can see it's time to see change?
Yes.
Okay. So I will use that as an opportunity to give you an introduction to why we say it's time to see change. Precisely picking up on what we've been discussing and hearing so far around we are in a crisis. We need to tackle a lot of problems and issues that have been revealed to us. I think it accelerated in the last 18 months because of the pandemic, but we're going to why we exist and who we are. Worldwide Generation is a sustainability fintech company founded by our CEO and founder, Manjula Lee. After 17 years of her trying to identify the best way to approach these challenges that we face in society and environment, and what is it that needs to happen for the UN SDGs as a framework to be delivered, and what else do we need to do as a coalition as such. And then in that journey, she realized that there is a huge need for organizations to report on data for transparency, for provenance, to obtain further credibility, for us to be able to tackle the many issues that we have. And I think it was Harriet that was talking about there is a need for data, and the transparency obviously a big part of this. So in that journey, we have developed and created and delivered products called Company Tracker Lite, Company Tracker Pro, and Portfolio Tracker. These exist to help organizations be able to deliver their reports at the different stages. Much like Harriet said earlier, for us, our motto is also come as you are. Don't try and do the work yourself on your own independently. Come exactly as you are. We will go through a process where we can create a program of wellness for the company, understanding the pains and the different challenges that they're presented with. And obviously in the industry that we live in and that we're working, there is a number of different challenges presented to us. Some of them come in the form of, if there is no legislation or regulation, there is standards and frameworks, but there is a multitude of those. And here is where I'm going to ask Ellen to go into a bit more detail around our USP, and what we're very proud of is our taxonomy, which is called the SD gap. So I'll ask Ellen to take over this bit and continue to share my screen.
Thank you, Gio. So what is SD gap? SD gap is a digital taxonomy which reflects the mapping completed by internationally recognized standards, frameworks, and guidelines to the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. We have designed it specifically to simplify the process of aligning various standards, frameworks, and guidelines across all the goals and the targets of the SDGs. We understand that the multitude of frameworks and standards are not helping organizations to have a clear view of the impact that they deliver. So for clarity, we do not map any of the standards or frameworks to the SDGs. We only use the mapping which they have done themselves. There are many different metrics that can map to the different SDG targets. So we believe that SD Gap is a useful tool to drive strategy and to standardize sustainability reporting language. For example, companies that are just starting on their disclosure journey can use SD Gap to see if there are metrics which are similar to those that they would like to measure. Instead of creating their own metrics, they can find one which is similar, and this one will have an SDG contribution. So at the moment, we have 13 standards, 13 frameworks, and 1 legislation on SD Gap, including GRI, SASB, UNGC, TCFD, and our work continues. So on this slide, you can see an example of what the SD Gap wheel looks like on our platform. Using SDG 6.2 as an example, you can see which standards and frameworks have metrics which align to this particular target. SD Gap also provides the codes of other SDG targets which also link to these metrics. This is meant to show the interconnectedness of the SDGs. And that's everything we have for you today.
Thank you so much, Ellen. So I'll stop sharing my screen just to close them, because Tim, you asked these questions about the other companies. So we're a B2B business. We work with organizations of all sizes, and in reality, what we are coming to terms with, it's been like that from the beginning, is that all organizations are now facing the challenge of reporting towards impact. Impact is a difficult aspect of their reporting as such, because it's incredibly difficult to measure to the level of where people can, relate to it, and there is trust. So transparency is a big journey around that. But when I say all organizations, I'm referring to large corporates, SMEs, and micro businesses. There is no longer, this is something that only corporates need to include in their strategy. Is for everybody, and everybody needs to start to report. So the reason why we have 3 products, and that we continue to work on that, is that we're trying to accommodate to all businesses. Come as you are, it doesn't matter what size of business you are, we're going to look at a strategy that fits in with them and use every single aspect of our tool, specifically the SD Gap, to help them get to that journey and hopefully demonstrate that they are delivering impact as much as they are sustainable and they are profitable, they are delivering impact positively.
Great. Thank you also, Giovanna and Ellen, for sharing that. Again, anyone in the audience, I'm sure you have lots of questions. How can I use this? What value does this bring to my company? Unless you, or before you ask these questions, I would like you to, each one of you, to give me maybe one prototype business case or one prototype customer that comes to you, and what are you offering that customer, and what value does he have, or I mean that company. In Germany, that's die Firma, actually, it's feminine, doesn't matter. So how do you help that company, and how do you get that company to actually change? So each one of you, one ideal type customer journey perhaps, and the value and the climate change that is triggered by what they do with you. Maybe we go the other way around this time and start with Giovanna and Ellen, and then Sonja, and then Harriet.
Oh, yes, of course. We're very proud of the testimonials we have of the companies that have joined us, especially this year, because we've seen an increment in SMEs numbers come to SEAS. I'm happy to share one example in particular that has recently given us their own experience and testimonial that is now available on social media. It's an organization called Mantiel. When they came to us, they are a company that are succeeding because they have an incredible team and values, and they are profitable. They're doing really well financially. But they are faced with the challenge of the investors saying to them, you need to demonstrate impact through the work you're doing. So their questions were incredibly well prepared, but at the same time, very honest, where they said, there are things that we just don't know and understand, and we're ambitious in what we want to report. So that's a good example for me, because we started for the journey exactly as we describe it, come as you are. Let's try and identify what is it that you've done to date. You've probably done a lot of good work. As it happened to be, they do incredible work around initiatives with NGOs locally and nationally. Therefore, they already are doing a lot for society and the environment. So then we go into understanding a little bit more about the complexity of their own business, whether it's supply chain or partnerships, understanding how you measure carbon accurately, and understanding and recognizing you're responsible for that as well. And obviously, that is a journey that I think one of our colleagues just mentioned. There is no such thing as a carbon expert in every business, and therefore we need to try and figure out how do we help them with that. So that is a good example, and it goes to show where there is a need now for companies to report. The knowledge might not sit within their teams. We can work out whether that sits in with our teams or one of our partners. The technology is there to gather the data and report, which gives us all credibility, transparency, and it helps us track progress. And of course, what does that look like for these companies that in the future, next year, not only are they going to demonstrate that they're profitable, but they're going to be able to demonstrate that they are delivering impact positively, and where there are gaps, they're working towards it. So they'll be able to show initiatives. It's a more focused approach, which takes away the pressure of what are we actually doing, and also the investment will be better placed. So overall, we demonstrate it's not perfect, nothing is perfect, but there will be so much more progress made and easy to demonstrate. So that's an example that I'm very happy to share with you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And that's the data is self-reported, or where do you get the data from?
The data can be uploaded into our platforms via 3 sources. A manual input through surveys and questionnaires that can be delegated across different teams, an upload of a file, or an integration through other systems. Of course, the data that we carry includes some of the aspects that potentially Planetly can give us as a source, or a meter reading, or a different supply chain information. So there are different ways. In terms of format, there are 3, and that's how the data gets fed.
Okay, great. And then they can export it into different frameworks and standards,
that's
depending
correct.
on what their customers or their regulation authorities demand of them.
Yes, that's a very good question. Actually, the way that the data can be exported is so relevant to where the company is in their journey. So if they're a very mature company that reports towards frameworks and standards, we are a platform that is GRI accredited, CDP, SASB, UNGC. But there are other aspects of the challenges they face that are not necessarily sit within those standards and frameworks. So there is a feature in the tools that is called the cosmetrics, which means we can identify if they want to focus on something specific, perhaps it's net zero. And then we can create a survey or a report that will help them track progress. And it's real-time reporting, which means they don't have to wait till the end of the year when the report is completed. They can look at the report as it's happening and do something about it. So much more ambitious goals can be set.
Okay. So one last question. If there is, for example, one of the companies we're talking about having a Planet Group, they are an IT service provider, they have 2,000 employees, so it's quite big, but still they have no clue about sustainability, but they have a large customer, which is a corporate, DAX, Fortune something, and so they need to certify that they are on that journey. And so you would help them that actually they use that request from their big customer not only to get that certification and get it over with, but actually set up a system where they start tracking real value and impact that they have and use it for becoming a source for good. Yeah,
correct, Tim. And also, Ellen sits in the sustainability team in our company and is the largest team in the business. The reason being is that we believe that domain expertise is very much needed. We know that the technology is world-class, but we do need to understand context within sustainability and where the businesses are. So just like you said in your example, if an IT provider comes to us, and we actually are working with a couple where they have customers that are saying, we need help with this. And sometimes customers make the assumption that because it's within IT, technology like this exists in that sort of infrastructure, but it doesn't necessarily. So we partner with them and we're a part of the solution, but together we work out how we're going to obtain the data. We need to look at security. We need to look at the source of the data, the domain expertise. So as much as we might have all technology lined up and infrastructure, then the Ellen's team would come in and say, this is the data that actually matters. These are the metrics that we need to understand. And then together we create a report. So that's why at Worldwide Generation, we're very proud to always say that we're an ecosystem. We're not necessarily one company and one solution. We have to come together and really truly leave SDG 17.
Okay, great. So when they come, this is what my customer wants from me. You help them actually set it up and then automate it as much as possible. That's cool. Sonja, what is a customer journey, a business case, and prototypical client, and how you help them?
Luckily, we work with a really wide range of clients, small companies, big companies, and the reason their route to us is also different. For some, it's for many of them, it's really the will to understand and to get transparency on their situation. For others, it's because they are part of a sector which is under heavy scrutiny, and they have maybe felt the pressure from customers or NGOs. And they have understood that they really need to address their climate action in a science-based way, that it's not something that can be done by a marketing or a PR department. They need to dig deeper. So they are, if we start working with them, they have their carbon footprint completed. If that's not the case, we have partners which help them arrive at that point where you have a reliable set of data to work with. And then I would say entry level is to help a company understand their climate impact and help them understand how they have to reduce their emissions in order to gain Paris alignment. We are not an advisor in that sense that we tell them what to do with the information we provide, but we create the transparency and help them judge on their climate activities. For example, if a strategy they maybe already have in place, if the steering and the management effect of that is strong enough to arrive on a transition pathway, or if an investment they are interested in would help that, or questions like that, if a change in supplier would help that. So these are the kind of questions that can be answered at an entry level where it is the aim to understand their own climate impact. That already helps to carry the idea of Paris alignment through a company, because out of the information we deliver, you can, for example, create KPIs that help different departments of a company understand their role in decarbonization. And that is so important if you want to really not just tick a box, but really take the company as a whole. So on a more advanced level, what we do is for a large corporation, for example, Continental is a big partner of us, a big customer, is to help them understand the climate impact of their different divisions and what technologies they need to invest in and what risks they have hidden in their supply chain that they need to address.
Okay.
On product level, we start with kind of a status quo report that we offer, or a software that we offer for usage. It's a scenario explorer where companies can themselves test their scenarios and explore what that would mean following these scenarios. And also we offer connection to existing customer systems via an API.
Okay. And one question, I mean, your software or your solution also works without actually having data from within the company, right? So this one study you did with the 856 companies to assess their climate alignment and correlate with their business performance, apparently not all of these 856 companies are your customers. so you could tell the climate trajectory of those 856 companies from that index without actually looking into them. So you did it from data that is already available.
Yes.
Is that correct? So then you work with average assessments, and whether this company was actually supplying in China or supplying in the US or supplying in Norway, you wouldn't know because it was average assessments or assumptions, or how do you do that?
For our customers, we of course work with their own data, and even if there might be uncertainties or a data set might not be complete yet, since in the case of climate change the clock is ticking, it's good to start at some point. For companies where we don't have that access or incomplete information, we use third-party providers for economic information that is FactSet research systems, and it's Urgentum for emissions data. Okay. And then you at least get a range that, of course, can be narrowed down and specified, but at least then you start with a range of what your situation looks like.
Okay. Great. Harriet, last but not least, what is a typical business success story that you can share?
Yeah, I would say that a typical, especially success story is, I mean, there are luckily there are many companies out there that are pretty aware of the climate crisis and do a lot on taking climate action and measuring and reducing the emissions. But I think what is always a great success for us is when companies come to Planetly, they approach us because they do not know that much about the topic yet. And then they come to us and approach us and ask us, what can we do to become more sustainable? And oftentimes it is employees, like employee groups internally at the companies that get formed and then say, like, what can we do to push our company to get more sustainable? And after we have then educated them on the topic a little bit, what does it mean to measure a company carbon footprint? What resources do you need internally? It oftentimes happens that as soon as they get started to measure their company carbon footprint, more and more doors in the companies open, so that they then, for example, say like, okay, we've measured our carbon footprint and took on some reduction measures, but what else can we do? And how can we set, for example, science compliant targets? Also, what Sonja was talking about. And I think that is always great success stories when you can enable companies to actually do something, and providing them the foundation with a software to measure their carbon footprint, but then also to go a step further and really say, okay, what else can we do? How can we transform our business? And I also find it really interesting here to look at like the motivations of most companies, why they approach us, why do they want to work with us. And I also saw that on one of Sonja's slides. I think you phrased it in questions that you said like, how can you best attract talent, young talent to your company? How can you assure capital? How can you, assure that you're compliant with regulation? And what we see is different reasons that are, of course, kind of like interconnected that reflect exactly what Sonja was having on her slide. So that first of all, we increasingly often have the situation where, for example, CEOs or so of companies come to us and say like, I have interviews with candidates that are asking me about our sustainability activities. I do not have a proper answer to that. The same is, of course, true for customers and business partners. People are requiring companies to have that status quo to be fulfilled, you know, that you are sustainable, that you make your sustainability transparent, or at least show like that you put some effort into this. And then when you look at the investor side of things, it is already quite established. I think in the talk before, you in the panel before, you also talked about ESG. So investors are very much looking at those metrics to be covered. And then finally, especially for larger companies, because of regulations, they have to report on their emissions. But whatever motivation you come from, I find that really, really, it's really cool to see that, and it makes me really happy. And I think when you ask about a success story, or the typical success story is that whatever the motivation was in the beginning, as soon as the people or as the companies get started, they want to do more automatically. And I think that is really, really nice to see. And I can only tell everybody also that is listening here that even though maybe the management of your company is saying like, oh, no, we don't need to do that at the moment. Yeah, if you start that journey yourself, you will be successful at one point in time. So I think that is the biggest success stories I can share here.
That's very nice. I once read that talking about taking the first step leads to the second step, that when you ask people on the street for money, the likelihood that they give you money is only like 6%. But when you ask them what time is it, they tell you the time, and then you ask them for money, it goes up to 23. So it's getting them to act, which makes them take the second step. So I think that is answering that question, is it part of the solution or part of the delay? I would also think it's part of the solution. I read from Per Espen in his latest book that in order to meet the Paris Agreement, we'd have to actually reach an improvement in our carbon productivity of about 7% per year. So we have to get more carbon productive, so the output compared to the carbon emissions of 7% improvement per year. Is that a number that you would support? And he says, if you want to tell greenwashing from not greenwashing, that's the number. Of course, the material footprint and everything else is important, but actually that tells you everything. And they can claim whatever they want. If they don't have a carbon productivity improvement of at least 7% per year, it's greenwashing. Would you support that?
If I may start, I think the most important thing about that quote is to set the relation between emissions and economic activity, because that is missing so often, and it's so important. Reducing emissions in itself is very easy. You can also do that if you go out of business. So you have to put it into perspective, into the value creation that you deliver. And you also have to benchmark it within your sector, because, of course, we can't expect the same level of decarbonization from an energy company like from a software company. And these are the points, I think, that are so important to consider when talking about decarbonization pathways.
Giovanna or Harriet or Ellen?
I would love to hear what Ellen thinks from the sustainability angle of this, but I very much support what Sonja suggests and saying, how are you measuring that? What is the context around it? Because just like Sonja said, you can do the same if you go out of business, which is not ideal. It's not what we're looking for. We're looking for change within what's possible for organizations. And that's where we come from the angle of come as you are. Because we need to take into account all the aspects of that organization, that business, that company, that group of people that are coming together to become profitable, service and industry, whatever whatever the motivation is. And I love Harriet's passion about this, because it's so important that we continue to persevere with the change within context and what we can achieve. So the targets have to be achievable and realistic, for sure. So Ellen, I don't know if you want to add anything from the sustainability angle to this.
I think what Sonja said was perfect. You can't just say 7% for everybody without a benchmark. And there isn't a way to enable comparison with that between industries. So with a perfect benchmark, you can do that.
No, that way he means is you benchmark against yourself last year, and you benchmark carbon emissions compared to value creation. So that's both in it. Right. So last year I had value creation of 1 billion and I had emissions X, and next year I have 1.2 billion and emissions Y. So you can measure the carbon productivity and the change in the carbon productivity from one year to the next. So that's the standard, and that's actually quite safe, I would say. And Harriet, what is your take on it?
I also totally agree with what has been said on this already, and you really always have to set it into perspective. And what we have to realize here that we need systemic change, and it doesn't only mean that every company, every individual has to decrease their emissions by X amount, 7%. That won't solve the problem. And so I totally agree that, it really depends on the sector you're operating in. But what I would like to say here also is, because our today's topic of the panel is carbon accounting, measuring sustainability or measuring impact, and because you're also talking about what is greenwashing or not, is that what is really, really important to consider is that everybody should treat this topic as like a bookkeeping topic, as an accounting topic, and measure impact, measure emissions according to standards. Because when you have the exact picture of something, only then you can also identify where can we easily reduce emissions by, for example, 7%, but you can also identify what areas of our business could we potentially change in the long run, could we potentially transform in the long run. So I would say that it is, talking about carbon accounting, it is crucial that everybody has a proper view on where they stand in order to be able to see where they can go from that standpoint onwards.
Great, thank you very much. It was really, really, really helpful, and I think great examples. One last round that I would love from you. It's already, our time is up. So one sentence each. When you work with the companies and you see they are serious or not, you see them acting or not, or committed or not. I mean, it's not black and white, it's in between. How hopeful are you? One round of each. And how can we make it even more hopeful? Maybe this time we start with Sonja.
I am hopeful, but the level of hopefulness depends on actually, the kind of people you've spoken to during the day a bit, maybe. There are so many great examples and people who are and companies who are serious about their effort, even if they come from hard to mitigate industries, and who are really on top of their game and ready to act and actioning already. So I think it really needs a concerted effort, and we don't have time to delay anything. But I am still hopeful. Yes.
Yes, we have to make ourselves aware of that the level of hope depends on who we just talked to 5 minutes ago. So if we are out of hope, make a conscious choice who we talk to next. And Giovanna and Ellen, what would you say?
I'll say that I am hopeful, because not necessarily because based on the people that we speak to on a regular basis, which is the people that are dealing with a problem, which is how do we do this? Where do we begin? But when I meet people like Ellen, Harriet, and younger generations, I am hopeful, because that means that all the work I've been trying to do, even though it might have very little impact, it clearly is continuing to flow through the next generations. So I am very, very hopeful that we're making progress. What I am hopeful also about is that we're educating ourselves a little bit more, and we're being more collaborative. And that means we're creating a community, worldwide community of people that are wanting to change things for the better. And I see a lot of more common sense being applied to this. We need the science, we need common sense, we need reality checks. And so when we have these sort of opportunities, I'm going to have a very good weekend, because I will feel very hopeful that there are more of us across the globe thinking about the same things that keep me awake at night and get me out of bed in the morning.
Thank you, Giovanna. Ellen, how about you?
Yeah, I would have to say the same. Especially for me recently, I've been working with a couple of clients who are at the very beginning of their sustainability reporting journey. And for them, it's quite overwhelming. They have no idea, but they're just so keen to try and make a difference and to measure their impact. So I think it's their how willing and how passionate they are to start. I think that's what's making me hopeful.
Thank you, Ellen. And Harriet?
I am also hopeful. First of all, because what I've already shared, that when people go the first step, they also go the second and third step. But also what we've just heard, that communities and networks, there's so many people having great expertise in this topic, and what we can really see is that more and more of those networks are getting formed, and that people really exchange knowledge, but not only stop at exchanging knowledge. You in the beginning made the example of we don't just want think tanks here that just calculate the impact overall globally in the next 100 years. But what we can see is that people get, also the theme of the day, get on the ground and actually apply the knowledge and apply it to create solutions. And that really makes me hopeful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was really, really, really nice talking to you and hearing from you, and talk about cooperation. Looking forward to seeing you three cooperate in the future, sharing your customers and developing your solutions together and making that seamlessly integrated. We have a 6-minute break, and then we go to our last panel, where we actually present something which is even more concrete and more on the ground, because this is going to be about regenerative farming and about how climate action and regenerative food production can go hand in hand, and how companies can get involved in that, with examples also from farmers from Gut Heidehof. And I think that will be a very nice closing. And then we'll come back at 5 to have a round of sharing with each other. And so thank you very much. 5 minutes break. See you then. Have a nice
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.